Well, welcome everyone. My name is Laura Pacheco, and I am the chair of the membership committee of the Federation of Portuguese Canadian Business and Professionals. I am filling in this evening for Ana Maria Faria, the president of the Federation, who unfortunately is not able to attend and provide the introductory remarks. On behalf of the Federation, I would like to thank you for joining us this evening. Tonight's webinar is generously sponsored by the Ted Rogers School of Management's Diversity Institute at the Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly known as Ryerson University. Now, before we begin, on behalf of the Federation of Portuguese Canadian Business and Professionals, I would like to acknowledge that our work and the work of our members takes place on the traditional Indigenous territories. We wish to express our gratitude to Mother Earth for her bounty and to honor all the original peoples of the land, including the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee. For us, this recognition of the contributions and the importance of Indigenous peoples is connected to our commitment to the recommendations of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Our April speaker series is focused on growing your business. Tonight, I am proud to say that we are hosting our first Federation of Portuguese Canadian Business Professionals webinar with member representation from coast to coast. Jason Aruda lives and works in Victoria, British Columbia, and Dr. Paula Mendonça lives and works in St. John's, Newfoundland. From Canada's Pacific coast and ocean to the Atlantic coast and ocean, we are gathered tonight with three Luso-Canadians who are also Federation Portuguese Canadian Business Professional members who will share their experiences and insights on growing their business. Let me share with you how the Federation is doing its part to support Luso-Canadian business community. Our mission is to promote business activity, foster professionalism, and develop networking opportunities. We encourage academic excellence, and as a representative voice, we advocate the prominence of our members within and outside the Portuguese Canadian business and professional community. We inspire academic equality through our scholarship program, and we recognize the contributions and achievements of men and women in our Portuguese community through our Excellence Awards. In fact, next month, we'll be celebrating the 39th Annual Scholarships and Excellence Awards Gala on Saturday, May the 28th at the Pearson Convention Center, located in Brampton, Ontario, starting at 6 o'clock. Now in its 40th year, the Federation has a long-standing history of leadership in promoting and championing critical discussion and collectively advocating for the Portuguese Canadian business and professional community. True to our mission, we are all about connecting people to people, people to experiences, and people to opportunities. The vision of the Federation is to bring a Portuguese Canadian association where we help each other up and celebrate our successes. If you like what you hear tonight, I invite you to become a member, get involved, and support the work that we do in the community. The work we do every year is made possible with the annual financial support we receive from our corporate sponsors. The diamond sponsor, Vienna Roofing and Sheet Metal. We have platinum sponsor, the Carpenters and Allied Workers Local 27. Our silver sponsors are Cardinal Funeral Homes, Fiera Kerr Family, IC Savings, Leona OPD Council, Leona Local 183, the Regional Insurance Services, Scotiabank, and Vieira and Associates Insurance Brokers. Thanks to our corporate sponsors for their unwavering support and continued commitment. And now it is with great pleasure that I would like to introduce to you Jason Aruda, our moderator for today's panel discussion. Now, Jason Aruda is currently a policy advisor and stakeholder manager. He earned a master's in public administration and a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Victoria. As a Portuguese Canadian, Jason is passionate about promoting Portuguese culture and history. And I'm sure you'll realize shortly when you see him that he certainly does so, given his background. Serving as a director on the board, he is also chair of the 2022 Speaker Series. Please join me in welcoming Jason Aruda, who is joining us virtually from Victoria, British Columbia. Over to you, Jason.
Thank you, Laura. And on behalf of our president, Ana Maria Faria, and our fellow board members, good evening to all of you. I'm pleased to be coming to you from the traditional territories of the Lekwungen-speaking people, known as the Songhees and Esquimalt peoples, the traditional keepers of the land where I live, work, and play. Tonight, we have three great panelists to discuss growing your business. As part of our ongoing commitment to offering value to our members, both current and prospective members, that we hope to attract to the Federation. Tonight's session reflects feedback that we received directly from you in previous sessions where we've sent out the survey. So I encourage you to fill out the survey that we'll be sending out after tonight's event to help us build future sessions. And I'd also encourage you to ask questions using the function at the bottom of your screen, because we'll be taking questions throughout the evening. The topic of growing your business is a critical and very important driver for why our members are looking for advice. From a wide lens, growing a business is an incredibly important part of the wider economy, both attracting investment, paying higher wages, and exporting more goods, all of which are a major benefit to the Canadian economy. On a more acute level for individual businesses, growing your business allows you to be more resilient in challenging economic moments, just like those we are facing and some of those which may be coming up. Tonight, we are blessed with three great panelists, as I say, and I'm just going to quickly introduce them now. Cristina dos Santos Clement was born in Canada to Portuguese parents and has a degree in marketing, has worked in various industries in sales and operations. But in 2021, Cristina decided to leave the corporate world and begin a website blog called Portugal Uncorked. And this blog is to connect people, to share wonderful experiences of Portuguese culture and communities both here in Canada and Portugal. And I'm sure we'll hear more about it as we go through the evening. Alongside Cristina is Jim Medeiros, who is a chartered professional accountant with a specialization in treasury. Jim has worked in private equity, financial services, real estate, non-for-profit, food manufacturing, and steel industries, and probably everything else. His experiences in treasury operations, liquidity management, financial planning, and analysis are critical to the day-to-day operations of business, particularly when it focuses around operational excellence and profitability. Jim is also experienced in traditional financial activities, and will be telling us more about that as we go through the evening. Finally, coming to you from our Atlantic coast, Dr. Paula Mendonça is the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the Memorial University. She leads Memorial's technology and transformation and, the Memorial's Technology, Transfer, and Commercialization Office, and is responsible for facilitating and supporting the university's strategic and long-term approach to advancing innovation and entrepreneurship across its campuses. Originally from Lisbon, Portugal, Paula has been in Newfoundland and Labrador since 2002, where she completed a PhD in biology from Memorial. Welcome to all three of you. Apologies for stumbling over your bios a little bit. It's just that they're so impressive. There was a lot to get in. Let me start with our traditional first question of the night, which is, how has your Portuguese heritage contributed to who you are today? And let's start with you, Cristina.
Thank you so much, Jason. Absolutely. My parents came over from Portugal in the early 1960s, and they were very much involved in the Portuguese community. So it was very much a part of the home that I was brought up in. Portuguese was spoken. There was no English allowed. So, you know, when my parents were speaking, it was necessary to reply back in Portuguese, not English. And, you know, that just stuck with me throughout the years. My parents always made sure that I really understood the Portuguese culture and heritage that, you know, that they grew up in, and being involved in so much of the Portuguese community, it just, you know, that just sticks with you, right? You just see how, you know, everybody just, works together, and just the language and the food, which is amazing, and all the different types of events that we would go to. So definitely that stuck with me, and you know, it just makes me proud that they really made sure they, you know, enforced it, but it was very beneficial. And I really just love everything that, you know, that they did to keep that going.
Great, and you can see clearly in your business. So we'll talk more about that as the evening goes on. Jim, how about you let us know how your heritage has impacted who you are and as a professional and as an individual? Oh, sorry, Jim, you're on mute.
There you go. Thank you, Jason. I think for me, again, going through university and my first several roles in my career, things were always relatively positive, and you keep on climbing the ladder, as they say. But I must say, since about 2016, started having some challenges, and with challenges, kind of work, and with COVID, and just some different opportunities that came up, and challenges, and actually taking a leap of faith into the organization that I created, M Squared. I just look back at some of the comments that my wife has said, and she said, "Oh, if there's one thing that I can always use as a word to describe you, it's persistent." And my wife being Portuguese, and just, you know, the overall culture that we're known to have in the non-Portuguese world is Portuguese, head down, always hardworking, always respectful, and always striving to do more. And the way I just, you know, part of the reason why I'm on the this meeting tonight is because I was kind of, you know, in that corporate culture, and then just things just happened in such a way that I was in between jobs, decided to just put my head down and to strive for something that I had always thought about, which is to open up my own business. And that's what I did. So it's always about, again, it's not so much, you know, how many times you're punched and how many times you face adversity. It's how you react, and how you get yourself back up. And, you know, we're all getting a little older, and we all see our parents and the difficulties that they went through, and the stories from their parents, and we live it every day. And part of the respect factor back to our culture is to, again, put on a brave face, put on a smile, and work as hard as you can to make the world a better place for your kids and your culture. So that's what I always remind myself of.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks.
Paula.
Thank you. I just wanted to start to thank you for the invite. It's a pleasure to be here today and be part of the Federation. I just became a member, I think, back in February after Laura talked to me. I didn't even know existed, and I'm thrilled to start contributing to this great community. So my story is a bit different because I am originally from Portugal. So my kids now are the first generation of Portuguese Canadians. But I came here for school at Memorial. Again, interesting enough, it was all about fish. I was a fish biologist, and I came here to continue I did my undergrad in the University of Algarve. And in marine biology and fisheries, and then what an appropriate place then to come to St. John's, Newfoundland, where we always heard about cod fishing and the cod that originally we ate in Portugal until the moratorium. So again, I find that it is the culture that I bring with me, is that, like, I'm a living example of it. I agree with Jim in terms of the persistence. I find that one of the reasons that I am in the position that I am now as the Director of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, even though I started as a fish biologist, was the fact while I was doing my studies is, what else can I do with a PhD? Because I don't know if I want to be in academia all my life. And then it was about figuring out where did I felt that my passion was falling, and really knocking on doors and asking, hey, can I volunteer with this incubator? And they said yes. And I feel that sometimes, and I noticed that in some programs that we lead, that sometimes Canadians are a bit shy about that, or they're sitting a little bit more like, I think we are always looking for a second chance. If this doesn't pan out and I want to stay in Canada, what can I do next so I can keep in Canada? And for me, having that plan B of like, I can go back to Portugal, but you know what, I want to try, I want to stay in Canada if I can, and always trying to strive to get those opportunities and to get people to know you in a place that is a small town, which has its advantages in terms of you can easily talk to a CEO of a company, you can easily talk to government with the high ups, which might be more difficult in a bigger town. But at the same time, people have very tight networks because they know each other since kindergarten. so getting those, being persistent, and again, being respectful, but being that person that knocks on doors and is able to be very upfront and sincere and direct. I think those are very Portuguese characteristics. And I think they really bode well for when we're trying to continue on our career path. Once we put our mindset, we just go after it.
Yeah, that's great. I like the contrast here of Jim, Christina, and myself sort of being in the space of that more traditional view of being hands-on, hard work, head down, keep going kind of attitude, with what I think is New Portugal, which is all of that plus a sort of a resistance to accepting the conditions, a little bit more ambition, something I think first generation and second generation Portuguese Canadians are starting to feel, where we're looking to break out of that old shell and take on a little bit more. So I think that's going to help this conversation along greatly. So let's get to our first question of the night. I think, we know that the ecosystem in Canada when it comes to startup for support is great. There's a lot of programs, there are a lot of incubators, there are a lot of different government levels of support when it comes to making it really easy for you to start your business, get off the ground, be registered appropriately, tax support and that kind of thing. It's the next level that we have an issue in Canada, which is growth. We have a lot of small businesses. For example, here in British Columbia, the definition of small businesses being under 100 employees means that we've got about 98% of our businesses are small, and that plays out to different degrees across the country in different provinces. So let's start off by discussing what we think are the major stumbling blocks that companies are dealing with right now when it comes to being able to scale up and take that next step. And we'll go reverse order this time. Paula, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I come from a little bit of a different perspective, and that's how I'm going to talk about that, is this university perspective. And really the stakeholders we deal with every day, that will be faculty members and students that want to start their own business. A lot of the times are businesses that are related to the research that they're doing in their labs, but sometimes are ideas that they have on their own, and they come to us or other centers at the university to help them start. One of the things that we see a lot is that we have people with it's twofold. We have people with great ideas, but they don't have the technical skills to implement them. So they have an idea for an app, etc., but then they need to find resources to actually make it work. Not understanding sometimes intellectual property and contractual obligations of actually bringing people in and outsourcing some of those things. But then you have the other side, these brilliant people. They have lots of technical skills, but they have no business acumen whatsoever, and they think that it's really easy, even though they're brilliant at their tech. They think that it's easy then to just start a company, and making them understand of bringing that technical side, people with some business experience, it could be MBA students, etc., to actually build the foundations, and those skills are important. The other thing that we see too is sometimes they don't understand who the customer actually is. They think that a customer and the end user are the same thing. And they really need there needs to, before you start your business and before you scaling up, it's really understanding who this really your customer is. And sometimes they do not understand that. And I know you're talking about the scale up and the grow and not so much at the beginning, but sometimes what we see too, again, on the research on the university side, is sometimes they incorporate a bit too early. fairly easy amount of funds that if you are connected to an academic institution, you can avail to bring your product to the next level. And sometimes people are so eager to incorporate that it is that valley of death that we call, that there's not a lot of funds in between that early stage and the scale up. And there's that period there where all of a sudden, if you incorporate and you are part of the university, you can avail of those funds anymore. Again, not related to everything, but we do that. We see that fairly often as well on my line of work.
Excellent. And just before we move on to Jim, I want to let everyone know that's listening, participating this evening, that the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen there is where you can enter your questions. It'll be great to hear from you if you have any as we go on. So I heard a little bit in the answer from Paula about sort of the operational side of things. And Jim, that's somewhere where you know your career excels and it's part of what you offer. What are you seeing as stumbling blocks when you take on those companies and getting into the treasury side of things? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Well, for me, I think that one of the most important things for businesses to grow is to be able to really pinpoint certain individuals that they see as individuals that might be missing some type of motivation, technical experience, or just the will or the so-called succession planning to kind of give them that little bit of a push to say, I see you kind of going in this direction, and that's where we'd like to be. If we take the perspective of we're looking at a small or medium-sized company to grow, I'm going to use the example in my world where kind of coming out of university in very large companies, the biggest focal point they always had was succession planning. I worked about 12 years at General Electric, and after starting there, it was just common knowledge where if you spent more than a year and a half or 2 years in a role, you were already so-called, wasting your time. And I thought to myself, really? Like it takes a year just to we all kind of think, I think general frame, it takes a year just to get comfortable. So just as you're getting comfortable, they're already saying, okay, move on to your next role. So if you take those experiences that I kind of went through and said, well, how do you kind of get comfortable quick, which is telling someone, mentally you're the person, so there's the motivation. Tell me what you want. And our Portuguese background, you don't ask for stuff. You kind of wait for someone to kind of give you the green light. So there's already that bias, right? So you got to learn to ask questions and go after what you want. And to be able to have someone, I use this, I hear this line all the time, and it's beautiful because it's ninguém spontiza sem padrinhos, right? And you have to have those godparents that are willing to kind of back you up. And how do you find that person, right? How do you find that coach? How do you find that person to get there? So, and just bringing it back to your question, because I could go on this for a while. If you are the person that has that business and you wanted to grow, there's nothing more important than the word networking. And networking to say, how do I connect with that person who I knew grew a business? How do I get that person and pay them a lunch, pay them consulting fees to come and understand my business? How do I join in that group of 20 or 30 people that are what we're here today, right? The Portuguese professionals, where someone on this meeting is going to contact one of us and say, oh, I love that story that I heard. Can I hear more? So it's all about having those godparents that help out and foster the ideas and help the business grow. So I'm giving more the kind of, not the technical answer, but more of the will and the thought process that you need. And I always bring it back to the Portuguese roots, which is, the way I grew up, don't speak unless someone asks you a question. Well, God knows we've all kind of been exposed to university, and if you just don't speak, you're going to be left at the back of the bus, right? So you have to be able to ask for what you want, go figure it out, always be respectful, but that Portuguese mentality, the way I grew up with my parents, you're always going to be always wanting more, so you have to push it upon yourself to get there.
Great. A couple of things we'll want to pick up in the next round of questioning. Very interesting. Christina, so you kind of started the business and it's growing. What are you doing to help it grow? What stumbling blocks are you finding in your process?
So it's definitely a learning curve because I worked in the corporate world for several years. So for, 20 years almost. So, and now becoming an entrepreneur and, a sole proprietor, it definitely is very different. So for me, for growing your business as, you know, a sole owner, it's definitely surrounding yourself with, you know, people to help support you, to really help you go in the right direction. And you have to do everything yourself. So you really have to be able to figure out what you're learning. So what courses are you taking? Who are you working with to help you really navigate those waters? And you know, my parents were both entrepreneurs, so I kind of had a little bit already of an inside information with them. So I really learned, you need so many different skills, right? So you have to be confident in what you're going to do. The passion has to be there. You have to be very open in talking to people and asking for help and asking what people did. So, you know, look at those that have their own business and are growing and flourishing, and what are they doing that you can perhaps incorporate into your business. And so by learning those traits from my parents, it's really helped me kind of better navigate what I'm doing right now. And you know, it's really just making sure that you're always out there, always talking about what you're doing, really getting people on board, and just really not losing sight of what you really want to do, right? So always have your eye on where you want to be and then try and get there. And yes, absolutely, there's going to be times where you're going to be, you know, one step forward, two steps back. Absolutely. And you just have to really be able to have that confidence internally and just keep striving for what you believe in. And it'll come. It will come with people coming on board and sharing your passion and really wanting to be involved in what you are trying to build.
Interesting. So what I gather from the three of you in your answers, there seems to be a point when your business is growing and at different stages in its growth where there might be a need to invite someone in when it comes to network or bringing in expertise or a mentor or just asking for advice. And interestingly, our first question from the audience tonight is, do you have advice for how to find a mentor? Let's start with Paula.
So that's an interesting question. I find, again, the best way to find mentors is it's the networking piece. So is attending events that with the people that you are potentially going to, that you have interested in working with or you have interested in learning more from. That has been very helpful for me in the past. Is really, I remember when I was a student, going back to when I realized I didn't want to be in academia. At the time, what I did is there was an industry association here. It was $50 for a student ticket. I bought a blazer, my first blazer at the mall, paid the $50, and I knew exactly who I wanted to talk to. And I made sure, because I studied the participant list, and I made sure that I was gonna talk to that person during that event. And fair enough, that was someone that was part of an incubator at the time here at the university, now the CEO of that incubator. And that was a person I was like, I'm so interested about what you do. I would love to volunteer with your organization. Do you think, I'm a student right now, finishing my PhD. Do you mind talking to me in the future? And a week later, I was in the boardroom talking to her and someone else from the organization. And 2 weeks later, I was volunteering with them. So going back, like it, and that person has been someone that I bounced back, like this was back in 2007. This is someone that I've been bouncing ideas, and we meet monthly at least. So I really, my advice is, again, see what is this event, the things that are happening around you that you can attend, and especially now the things that are opening up in person is so much different. And then like meet those people and study their participant list, see what those people could be. It's organic. Knocking on the doors like, can you be my mentor, never works. There needs to be some, there needs to be that type of engagement and the energy to match.
Sure. Jim, would you agree with that, or anything different?
No, totally agree. I'm just going to give you a different spin. I would just like you to look at it through this lens. Think of ourselves as a corporation. Any well-run corporation has a board, and that board is your legal person, your finance person, your marketing person, your overall innovation person. And we all know people that fit the bill, right? So in your day-to-day life, someone does your taxes. When you've had a tough day, your shoulder is gonna lay on someone and say, you know, here's how today went. You have a legal person. So your mentor is someone that 9 times out of 10 is going to be work related, but to just think outside that box for different ideas. And it's your friend that you had from university that yes, you talk about things, but you say, yeah, at work, here's what's happening. How would you look at this particular issue? So to just have a little bit more of a wider range that the mentor could be kind of your support group from a business perspective. That's what I'd like to add.
So Christina, again, as you've sort of ramped up operations in your business, I imagine there's been networking and mentors. How have you gone about finding them? Is there anything that's particularly stuck out in those relationships as you get going and to the point where you are now?
Yes, absolutely. When I was deciding to actually open up this website, it was definitely, who do I reach out to learn a little bit more and to help support me? And who is that? Is it 1, 2, 3 people? So I definitely reached out to my network, and I've been very lucky, have had great support. I do have someone that really does help me and help mentor me in kind of navigating through my ups and downs of as I'm going through things. So I definitely reached out to everybody and just started letting them know what I was starting to do and if they had any input or any kind of advice for me. And then, you know, that the same thing. I mean, if they are really understanding your passion and they want to help you out, they will definitely step up and say, anytime you need me for this, this, or that, whatever it is, financial, legal, marketing, social media, whatever it is, definitely have had a lot of success and support from that network. And definitely have a few people that I have one person in particular that is my kind of go-to person, but I do have a few others that I bounce other ideas off of and that they help me navigate.
Great. So, I think, if you look at the research about growing a business, there's often the sort of same elements that are pointed out that are stumbling blocks, such as, management competency, which can cover everything from basic marketing to accounting, things like being able to finance your next stage of growth, making the right decisions around what you should be spending your money on, access to customers, access to export markets. And these are things that are observable, but there seems to be an underlying cause that hasn't necessarily been aligned. And I usually like to say that I think that there's a psychological barrier around growth, that people are really focused on their day-to-day because they've created themselves a job and they want to be able to make sure they pay the bills, and that risk reward measure often feels like it's too much risk for potentially no reward. And obviously without that risk, you can't really grow. So do you have any ideas around how people can mitigate that risk or get comfortable with risk? Or perhaps a better view on, taking the risk is worth it, whether it works in that moment or not, because of the learning so positive. Do you have any perhaps experiences or things you've observed, Christina, to start with?
Yeah, you know what? When you start building your business, absolutely that investment is much higher at the beginning. So you have to be, when you're thinking about opening up your own business, you have to be able to have a sort of a range of enough money that you're going to say, okay, I've got this much that I'm going to invest in, and you really hope that within that amount that you're looking at, you're being realistic, right? Absolutely, there will be things that perhaps come about that you're going to go, that's a little bit more expensive than I thought. Whatever it is, whether you're putting a specific system in place, whether you are ordering product, when you're looking at supply chain, it really, you have to be able to, as you're working with those people in your network, is understand what's realistic and taking those steps. So if you wanted to do something, like if you're selling a product, you really want to have a look at how big of that product line is it, and how should I start? So should I just start with a little bit? Should I start with a larger amount? And it really is, you have to always be able to review and plan as you go along. So there has to be a plan, and you have to be able to really understand what that realistic kind of point of no return is. So at the beginning, absolutely, there is going to be more of a risk than the reward because you are building it up. But as you're going, and hopefully as you're navigating, you're taking those steps in between to assess, and then to make sure, okay, you know what, let's do this instead. Let's move there instead. And then kind of taking your time to understand what the audiences are, interested in, and what's not moving as well as you thought. So to me, it definitely is just making sure you're assessing, being realistic, and having, your comfort zone, that you have to be able to have that minimum and that max, right? So sort of like, once I reach that max, that's when I'm going to have to reassess. But in between, you have to allow yourself to give yourself that little bit of risk to get out of that comfort zone. But again, asking for those people in your support system as you're going, to make sure that you aren't missing a step, and just being comfortable with that.
Sure. So Jim, again, similar question, but just from, your ability to analyze a company's financial readiness. I'm sure you've seen times when a company's finances are ready for growth, to take a little bit of a risk, maybe not necessarily make a major investment in some new tech, but certainly to grow their product offerings or their customer base, and maybe haven't taken that step. How would you navigate that?
Well, to me, I look at that as saying that those that are stagnant are always already one step behind, right? So there always has to be innovation. So it doesn't matter if let's just say on a 10-step life cycle of a company, right when you start to right when you're mature at step 9 or 10, there should always be a little bit of money in the budget for innovation. There should always be something in there where you're just kind of the proverbial throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing if it sticks, because if you don't, you never know what's around the corner, right? So we all know of those companies that, the Blockbusters of the world said, no, why would anybody ever buy Netflix and watch movies on from their home? That doesn't pan out. But they totally could have bought Netflix back when Netflix was offered to them, but they said, no, people would never do that. So we all know of companies that you always have to try something new, right? I just wanted to spin this a little bit to just give a little bit of an insight for myself, and kudos and applause to those people that, from Christina's perspective or others, who actually said, you know what, I'm changing the direction of my life. I unfortunately, created my company and had nothing to lose because I had lost my role, my current job. So was severed out, had a transition package, nothing to lose. Like, I could have just put my foot up in the backyard and said, I'm going to take it easy for 6 months. But I said, now is the time to start a new company. So, and now I have that company, but the way I've lived, I said, I'm not willing to put all my eggs in one basket and just get my overall remuneration from this company. So I took on a full-time role as well. And, we all have our different perspectives, and it all comes back to risk, right? So there's that mentality of our Portuguese culture. They're pretty risk averse, right? The way I grew up. And that has actually helped me in some ways in my role and companies to always be ready, always asking those, the recommendations. Did you check this? Did you check that? And effectively helping companies to be risk averse. But that has held us back in terms of, again, asking questions and trying to get that job and everything else. So a long-winded way of saying, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about growing your business, and one of it to start a business, and that's where my view is there's nothing that can hold you back from having a full-time job and starting something on the side. Everyone's first question will always be, oh, do I have time for that? You always have way more time than you think you do. Most of us with kids and this and that, and I'm now a proud dad of a 17 and a 16-year-old. And my wife and I look at each other like, wow, we're empty nesters now. So not saying to do it in your early 50s, you can do it in your 30s or your 20s, and there's always those crazy times, but you never know until you do step one. So just, try step one, incorporate a business, try working for someone else, do some consulting work. And it's amazing where all of a sudden you just learn something new every day, And that's the beginnings of all of a sudden one day looking back and saying, wow, how did I grow that business? It's not one step. It's just a culmination of a bunch of little steps. And I see Christina nodding her head, right? Whether it was your parents that gave you a shot in the back of the head and said, "What? Just start," or you fumbling into it the way I did. There's many different ways to get to the end.
Yeah. So, Paul, if I hear Jim correctly, I think what we're saying is part of running a business and having a business is always a certain. There has to be risk in the portfolio. You always have to have risk because that's the only way you're going to grow and that's the only way you're going to survive. So, really, being comfortable with risk is you need to be as comfortable with it as running your business. And on the other side, it's a bit of, we need to hedge our risk a little bit with maybe some different activities or as Jim's done, a full-time job on top of the business, right? So how do you see that from your perspective, particularly with, the focus on ideation to commercialization?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I really like what both Christina and Jim talk about. I had two small businesses as well that I had on the side for many, many years. Started as one, then evolved as another as things evolve and grow. I did let that aside just before the pandemic when I got my new role, but it's something that is there on the side. So I appreciate having the full-time job and having your business and seeing where it goes. And what I agree with the part of the risk. There needs to be some risk. At the same time, people also have to put bread on the table, right? So that it's that management of what needs to be done. I find that a lot of the people are afraid to be successful. So they're okay, they're comfortable at this level, but then they're afraid when things start exploding. And it's like, okay, like if I want to take this to the next level, I really need to make a different type of commitment. But depending where you are in your business, I find this is where an advisory board can be very, very helpful. So you're bringing together, if you don't have that part as part of your management team yet, having an advisory board where it has those types of expertise and the network that can help you bounce back some ideas of where the direction of your business can be, I find it extremely helpful. And I find that if you don't have that in place and you are at that stage that you have been in business for a while, that really think about putting a board in place. It's also accountability, right? So it is both ways, accountability, but also again, focus. And again, depending what your business, where you are, going back to Jim and Jim talked about innovation, I talk about R&D and it's kind of the same stuff. So if you have like a type of you need to put some, if you really want to grow, you really need to put some money aside, especially in certain lines of business for R&D. There's going to be challenges that you're going to have. There's going to be products that you want to create, and you probably don't have the capacity or the time within the business that you have right now. But that's where you can look about partnerships, and then like a plug for universities, for instance. Universities are going to have access to expertise and equipment to do certain things that you might not have the capacity to do within your business. And what is really helpful with the universities is that with a small cash contribution from an industry partner, sometimes depending on the funding and your eligibility, you can leverage that 5 times. So you can have actually a pretty big project to put a new product, start a new product line, etc., with a small investment from your part. So again, depending on the line of business where you are, but we have a lot of tech companies accessing the university all the time. Oil and gas is huge in Newfoundland, in Labrador, as you know. We have huge contracts with oil companies, mining companies. 40% of the research contracts that we have at Memorial are 40% of the research income that comes to Memorial is from industry partners. So and that is from a myriad of sectors. So really keep that in mind of talking to the tech transfer office of the university on your area, or the research where the expertise reside within the universities that you're familiar with, but you'll be surprised how a really neat project can come to place with very little investment from your end.
Yeah. So again, building the local network, I think for most of our participants and members, seeking out those relationships with the university or local colleges, technical institutes, there's opportunities there for them to leverage that without having to give up sort of a portion of their business to somebody else. This is a real opportunity for them. Interesting question from our audience, which also speaks to the practical side of things. The question is it better to pursue external funding or loans, or try to pay as you go in cash, sort of bootstrapping? So we know that there are a lot of programs out there from a variety of municipal, provincial, and federal agencies when it comes to loan programs, grants, etc. We know sometimes with small businesses and medium-sized enterprises that the timing isn't always right, and the amount of work that goes into them can't be right. Is often something you can't make time for, I should say. Christina, what do you think? Do you think looking for that external funding and loans is an important part of your plans for scaling up, or do you prefer to keep it in-house on your own budget?
So I did look into funding for sure at the beginning as I was building the business, and I ended up just keeping it internally because I had to look at what I was doing, and the funding, there were a lot of different forms and a lot of information that at that point I wasn't really ready for the way I was scaling it. So so for right now, for what I need for my business, it's fine. I did, like I said, I did have a budget. I do have sort of that little bit of a savings piece that I'm utilizing internally for what I'm working with. But absolutely, I know just from doing the research, there are so many different options out there for funding. And so really depending on what you're looking for and how you're building your business. Because I'm a website blog, I don't have an actual store. And so right now I build it on partnerships. And so as I'm building on partnerships, the funding that is out there is sort of that gray zone for me right now. And as I scale up and eventually have a store and eventually start, then absolutely I'll go back and see where I can actually have those different forms of funding. But I know they're definitely out there.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. So it may be of interest to the person that asked the question as well. Were there other programs that you found were helpful when it came to bringing in product or helping you with a marketing plan, anything like that? Do you see any value in people pursuing that, or should they really just focus on their idea and take on the training themselves?
Again, I agree with with Paul and Jim when it comes to your network. I really, because I reached out to so many different people, I had such great information as to just experience levels of what is definitely out there that worked for me. And like I said, there's definitely opportunities out there for funding. You just have to make sure, reach out to your network, see who's doing what you want to do or something similar, see what they've done in order to help fund what they're looking at, and see if that works for you, because it can be very overwhelming when you're going in there and searching for your funding. So by working with a few different people, it really helped me kind of tailor and streamline what I was looking for. So again, it really, I would work with your network team, your either, kind of the board of advisors, or just a couple of people that, are in a very similar type of business that you're looking at, just what they've looked at and what worked for them.
Great. So Jim, back to the original question about bootstrapping versus going after external funding. What do you think is best in the long-term interests of your business?
Yeah, to me, it's going after and getting as much funding as you can. So, this is what I grew up to do in terms of working and, General Electric and being in treasury and then going on my own. And effectively, that's what my company does. And in one small sentence, I basically do, when you think of a mortgage for an individual or a family, I do that for corporations. So it's all about them saying, A, do I have the right funding in place? And if I don't, how do I shop around and get there? And I try to make the difficult, interacting with a banker or a BDC or somebody like that into very manageable steps to say, without giving up your company and going on Shark Tank, here's how this is a total benefit to you of getting through these quick little steps. So, kudos to what, Christina was saying in terms of, having that advisory to say, it can get out of hand really quick in terms of you can't go after everything. So how do you have someone tell you, try this first? Everything we do, we always learn something as simple as don't do that again. But there's only so much time in the day. So when you're trying to get funding, you really have to pick and choose. So don't underestimate your own banker, right? The banker that you've been with since you were 14. Just going to them and asking that question, saying, hey, do you have a small business loans group? 9 times out of 10, they do. And then, right from your government associations of the BDC and EDC, they're both effectively doing the same thing, is trying to help you out. And Canadian government, gotta love them, right? Because, we'll give you X amount of dollars and, interest-free loan for this first year or whatever. And then depending on how it goes, we'll ask for a payment plan. Quick answer is always go after the free money. It's when things start to get to for some crazy reason, you're looking for a piece of the business, that's when you have to hold back.
Sure. So just a quick follow-up on that. I mean, obviously, the obvious risk profile of taking on any kind of debt is obvious to most. But when it comes to specifically these sorts of loans that we might get from public agencies for businesses, are there any specific risks that obviously, we'd advise businesses to pursue them, as you're saying, but are there certain risks that people should be aware of when engaging with these lending products?
No, the risk is that, just to me, is just being turned down, right? But if you've got a fairly viable idea that, let's face it, could fall apart, very quickly, because you're generally going to be a 1 person or less than 5 employee operation. And you decide that you're going to bring in cod from Portugal and deliver it in Toronto. And all of a sudden with COVID, that business has gone upside down. The business busts, right? And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but you're one company of 5 employees. Given what recent events of, subsidies and all the other money that the company that Canada has given away to individuals, your business loan all of a sudden folding, not the end of the world, and not something that all of a sudden our government's going to be like, oh my God, we're going to fall apart because the money we gave Jim, we're never going to see again. So I'm not saying that all of a sudden we're going to tank it, but if that's the biggest risk, that all of a sudden a drop in the bucket doesn't go to the Canadian government, so be it.
Okay, great. Paula, I mean, this is sort of the wheelhouse of what you do at Memorial when it comes to providing support. So is it, I guess it would be an avenue you would advise businesses take. So maybe how can they best take advantage of it? How do they present themselves in the most likely way to succeed?
Yeah, so again, it depends where you are. It comes to a point that if you are, I believe that if you're not getting loans, you really are not going to be able to, you're not really going to be able to scale up the way that you might want to at the end of the day. And taking into account that some of the loans, if you're not successful, you don't have to repay them as well. So there is some of those caveats, and there are tax credits attached to them, and a lot of them like shred credits. So the link that was just posted is a really good link from ISET, and it shows you like a questionnaire of what you're looking for and the government fund that you can avail from, because again, like Christina mentioned, there's so many. But you can really select yourself. What is the different things that you need? Are you looking for this type of funding, etc.? And then it shows cases of some of the funds that you can avail. So I find that really helpful to kind of narrow down, because it can be overwhelming. But again, we always recommend, so we don't work with companies at a certain point, that's like we send them to our incubators, again, the incubators there, help them put an advisory board in place. They help them with all those other pieces. But when we have students coming, is like, you know what, go to this website, see what you think you need afterwards. And then we can potentially put you in contact with some of those individuals on those agencies. But I do believe that it comes to a point that you need to be looking for those loans to grow.
Yeah, and the link that Paula is mentioning, just for our participants this evening, we will share maybe in our next newsletter, or we'll make sure that it's available on social media for everybody to see. It's very useful. It does take you through a step-by-step. What kind of business are you? How many employees, etc. A lot of really important questions that help you navigate the system of everything that's available to you. And I believe it covers all 3 levels of government as best it can. So it's a really useful tool that I've used myself. So we also like to sort of finish. We're getting close to time here. So it has to be kind of a quick answer so we don't go over time and interrupt people's dinners or bedtime, depending where they're sitting in the country. Are there any books or TED Talk type of folks that you would recommend our listeners, our participants, excuse me, might want to check out to help them in their business journey? Let's start with you, Christina.
I really like Brene Brown. So she
Okay.
definitely, I've read everything and definitely listened to her podcast. So that resonates with me. That kind of helped me get out of my comfort zone and really figure out what I wanted to do. And Portugal Uncorked, it's all about uncorking everything that, you know, Portugal has to offer. And then how do we get it here in Canada, right? So it's across the board. So I'm trying to highlight, you know, communities and small businesses and really highlighting specific people and places and really trying to connect that. So by connecting with Brene Brown and what she has to say about kind of getting out of your comfort zone, that definitely you know, was really helpful for me.
Awesome. Jim.
I guess you really got me with that question, because there's I'm not a big reader in terms of books, but I'm always, Globe and Mail website is something I just look at every day. But if you had to push me for two books,
Or a business leader, yeah.
Yeah, the Wealthy Barber. I just wanted 2 books that have always stood with me. The Wealthy Barber, just in terms of just basic finances and things that people should always say. You know, we always know what we should be doing, but just kind of a reminder, you know, is that. And the Wealthy Barber, and just in terms of like attitudes and things, is, and again, I can never underestimate this one, is the 7 skills of very positive people. I think what it's called, the seven habits.
Oh, yes. 7
highly
habits of highly,
effective.
yeah,
Highly
that's the
effective
one.
people, right?
Yeah, that is a great book. Yeah.
Just something to just say, you know what, I forget it, or skim it, or review it. It's just one of those things which just gives you a little bit of, you know, we all focus on being confident and being ready, and that's just the little things in life that you just we always need a refresher. So those are the 2 books that kind of always come and pop into my mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
Paula, Talking to Humans, is that the one?
Yes, so I just posted that on the chat for us, but yeah, so again, I like Brene Brown. I have some books from her. I've read the Healthy Barber back in the day when I would say like maybe 10 years ago, when I was trying to figure out finances in Canada and investments. Talking to Humans is a little bit of a different take. I think I alluded at the beginning about customer discovery. I have sometimes people saying we just need our customers. We have this really cool idea. We want to start a company. This is my company, and we just now meet customers. And it's like, well, if you don't know who your customers are already, and if you don't know if you have a market fit for your product, you need to do all this homework before you start your business. Don't put investment, especially your dollars, into something without you making sure that you have your customers out there. Who are your end users? Who are your customers? Again, they might be different. Talking to Humans is all about that. So it's a really good way if you're starting a startup, if you wanted to add a new product line, to kind of understand that process of customer discovery.
Great. Okay, well, as per usual, we could go on forever. This has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much for your time. If anybody that has been participating this evening wants to connect with any of our panelists or has further questions, feel free to contact the Federation, and we will make sure that those questions get through or those connections get made. As I said, this is the evening, so thank you so much for joining us. I hope you found this as insightful and as inspiring as I have. It's been a great evening. I've learned lots. And we at the Federation appreciate you joining us this evening and encourage you to become a member if you haven't already done so. After the conclusion of this event, we will be sending out a survey so that we can continue to improve our offerings. As I mentioned at the start, we do take your feedback and we do try to incorporate it into the program because we want this to be useful for you. And I'd encourage you to follow us on our social media channels and keep up with us in terms of all the events. We've got our gala event coming up at the end of May, and I believe tickets are still available. So now in our 40th year, the Federation has a long-standing history of promoting and championing our critical discussion in the Portuguese Canadian community in terms of upping our game. We're really looking to help our community punch above its weight, because it's something that I think many of our members and our board are enthusiastic about. So I would like to thank our corporate sponsors and members on behalf of our president and my fellow board members. And I would also like to give a special thank you to our technology partner who helps make this all look very seamless and easy, the Diversity Institute at Toronto Metropolitan University. So as I say, from myself and my fellow board members, thank you and bonne nuit.
Bonne nuit. Thank
Thank
you.
you.